The silence broke first. Not with words or warnings, but with the sickening crack of bone meeting metal as a body collided with the row of scratched blue lockers. Maya Chin stood frozen against the cold surface, her eyes wide with a terror that seemed too deep, too ancient for a 17-year-old girl. Derek Santos, captain of the football team, had her shirt bunched in his fist, his varsity ring catching on a loose thread. As the fabric stretched and tore, something dark emerged from beneath the collar. An image. Intricate. Incomprehensible. A story none of them were prepared to witness. But before you discover what happened when this entire school learned what true strength looks like, join a community that sees beyond the surface. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what unfolds next will forever change how you view the silent ones among us. Northwood High School existed in a perpetual state of controlled chaos. The corridors were rivers of teenage energy, flowing with oversized backpacks, whispered secrets, and the constant hum of 1,000 intersecting lives. Harsh fluorescent lights cast their sterile glow across scuffed linoleum floors, making everything look slightly unreal, slightly staged. Rows of dented blue lockers stood as mute witnesses to daily rituals of cruelty and kindness, indifferent to both. 3 weeks into the fall semester, Maya remained invisible. She'd transferred from somewhere in the Northeast, a detail that in this sun-bleached corner of Texas carried the weight of foreign origin. She moved through the hallways like smoke, present but insubstantial, her dark eyes always focused on some distant horizon only she could perceive. Even in the oppressive September heat that turned the school into a furnace, she wore long sleeves. The popular crowd found this suspicious. Different. Threatening. Today, she'd committed the unforgivable sin of existing in Derek Santos's path. He was everything the school valued. Athletic, handsome, confident to the point of arrogance. His Letterman jacket was armor, his status a shield that made him untouchable. When Maya's shoulder brushed his in the crowded hallway, his reaction was immediate and vicious. "Watch it, freak," Derek snarled, his voice carrying over the ambient noise. The river of students slowed, forming eddies and pools around the confrontation. Everyone recognized the pattern. This was entertainment. This was the hierarchy asserting itself. Maya's voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" Derek laughed, harsh and theatrical. He shoved her, not violently but with enough force to send a clear message. Her worn backpack slipped from her shoulder, spilling textbooks and a leather-bound journal across the floor. "You think sorry matters? You drift around here like you're special, like you're better than everyone else." His friend Marcus joined in, emboldened by the gathering crowd. "Yeah, what's with the long sleeves anyway? You hiding track marks or something? You some kind of junkie?" Nervous laughter rippled through the onlookers. They were Romans in the Colosseum, and Derek was their champion. No one intervened. To help was to become the next target, and self-preservation ran deeper than compassion. Derek leaned closer, invading her space completely. "I think it's time someone taught you how things work around here." His hand shot out, fingers closing around the collar of her threadbare shirt. "Let's see what you're so desperate to hide under all that fabric." "Please," Maya whispered, and for just a moment something flickered in her eyes. Not just fear. A warning. A final plea. "Don't." He didn't listen. With one brutal motion, he yanked the fabric. The sound of tearing cotton echoed like a gunshot in the suddenly silent hallway. The collective gasp was instantaneous. There, sprawling across her left shoulder and cascading down her arm, was a tattoo unlike anything they'd ever seen. This wasn't some trendy design from a mall parlor. It was a masterwork of darkness and memory, rendered in stark black ink that seemed to absorb the fluorescent light. A warrior's face, frozen in a scream of eternal fury, dominated the composition. Ancient script in an indecipherable language wove through the image like dark veins. Below it, horrifyingly realistic, was a bullet captured mid-flight, tearing through skin that was only ink but looked viscerally, painfully real. The artistry as breathtaking. The imagery was terrifying. Derek's sneer faltered. His grip loosened. For 3 heartbeats, there was only stunned silence. Then Marcus, desperate to maintain the momentum, forced a laugh. What the hell is that? Some wannabe gangster garbage? He reached out to poke the tattoo, his finger extended in mockery. That's when everything changed. The voice didn't come from Maya's mouth. It emanated from the tattoo itself, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the air at a frequency that bypassed ears and resonated directly in the chest. It was ancient, cold, and carried an authority that made the fluorescent lights flicker. Asterisk cough 10 hera so, asterisk, the words were foreign but the threat was universal. Marcus jerked his hand back as if burned. What the? Derek stumbled backward, his face draining of color. How are you doing that? What kind of trick? Maya was no longer pressed against the lockers. Her posture had transformed completely. The hunched shoulders of fear had straightened into a warrior's stance, grounded and balanced. The storm in her eyes had broken, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. The voice spoke again, this time in heavily accented but perfectly clear English. The child asked you to cease. You did not listen. We always listen. Who is we? Derek's voice cracked, his carefully constructed confidence evaporating. Maya spoke then, her own voice steady but layered with something else, something other. His name is Alexandros. And he has very strong feelings about bullies. The crowd was paralyzed. This wasn't a typical school fight. This was something from a nightmare, playing out in broad fluorescent daylight. A girl and the ghost in her skin. Derek, cornered by his own pride and the watching eyes of his peers, made a catastrophic decision. His fight instinct, honed on practice fields, overrode reason. With a roar that was more fear than rage, he lunged at her, fist pulled back for a devastating blow. He never made contact. Maya's body moved with a precision that was inhuman in its efficiency. She didn't dodge so much as flow, like water around stone. She stepped inside his swing, her hands moving in a blur of controlled violence. One hand redirected his punch with minimal effort. The other struck a nerve cluster on his inner arm with surgical accuracy. His entire limb went numb instantly. Before he could process what was happening, she'd hooked her foot behind his ankle and swept his legs. The 200-pound linebacker crashed to the linoleum with enough force to shake the lockers. He lay there, gasping, humiliated, completely unable to comprehend what had just happened. The tattoo growled, a sound of deep, primal satisfaction. Maya stood over him, not triumphant but resigned, as if she'd just acted out a script she'd hoped never to perform again. She looked at the circle of terrified faces surrounding them. Asterisk proida poisesai, asterisk, she said softly, her voice her own again though carrying profound sadness. He's warning all of you. Walk away. Forget this. Leave me alone. Before we continue with what happened next, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification bell. The story only gets more intense from here, and you won't want to miss a single moment, asterisk asterisk. No one needed a second warning. The crowd dispersed in a panicked scramble, their whispers already beginning to construct the legend. Derek scrambled to his feet, cradling his dead arm, and fled without looking back. Marcus was already gone. In the sudden empty silence of the hallway, Maya sank to the floor, her back against the very lockers where she'd been pinned moments before. The adrenaline drained away like water, leaving her shaking and hollow. She pulled the torn edges of her shirt together, covering Alexandros once more. A single tear traced down her cheek. Not a tear of victory. A tear of loss. She'd just sacrificed the one thing she'd come here seeking, anonymity. That night, alone in her small rented room above a laundromat, Maya traced the lines of the tattoo in the pale moonlight filtering through thin curtains. The voice was silent now, a dormant guardian waiting in the shadows of her skin. Her mind drifted back, not to a tattoo parlor, but to a whitewashed village clinging to the mountains of Crete. She'd been 9 years old, holding her grandmother's weathered hand as the old woman pointed to faded photographs on the kitchen wall. "This is where your strength comes from, Agape Mao," her grandmother would say, her voice like stones rolling in a river. "This is not just history. This is blood. This is destiny." The photographs showed a man named Alexandros, though that wasn't his birth name. It was the name he'd earned. During World War II, he'd fought with the Cretan resistance, becoming legend among both allies and enemies. The Germans whispered he was possessed by an ancient Spartan warrior, so fearless and brutal was his fighting style. In a desperate act of sabotage that went catastrophically wrong, Alexandros had sacrificed himself to save his entire village, detonating a Nazi ammunition depot with himself still inside. The explosion had been visible from the next valley. The moment his spirit left this world, her grandmother had whispered, something impossible happened. The village woodcarver, old Stavros, a man known for his visions, fell into a trance. He took charcoal and drew Alexandros on the taverna wall, exactly as he'd looked in his final moment. And the portrait, it spoke. It gave one final order to the surviving fighters. His will made manifest. His soul refusing to pass on, bound to our bloodline to protect his descendants. A tradition was born from that miracle. Every generation, one child of the bloodline was chosen. On their 16th birthday, the family's designated artist, now a master of sacred tattooing, would ink the portrait using methods and ingredients passed down through generations. It wasn't optional. It was birthright and burden intertwined. The spirit of Alexandros, the family's eternal guardian, would live within the tattoo. Silent watcher. Occasional guide. And in moments of dire need, a protector of devastating efficiency. Maya's mother had fled this burden, escaping to America for a normal life. But when a car accident orphaned Maya at 14, it was her grandmother in Crete who took her in. The old woman saw the loneliness in the girl, the fragility. She also saw the iron core beneath. She presented Maya with her destiny. The tattooing took 6 weeks. It was ritual as much as art, accompanied by prayers in ancient Greek, burning incense, and her grandmother's constant vigil. The pain was immense. The transformation was complete. When it was finished, as Maya stood before an age-spotted mirror, the voice that echoed in her mind for the first time was not her own. *Se prostativo, Pidi Mao. Until my last breath, I guard you. She'd returned to America to finish high school, to grasp some fragment of the normal life her mother had wanted for her. She wore long sleeves in all weather. She spoke to no one. She became a ghost. Until today. The next morning at Northwood High existed in a different reality. The story had metastasized overnight, spreading through social media and whispered conversations like a virus. Maya was no longer a ghost. She was mythology. They called her everything from demon to government experiment. The videos, grainy and shot from multiple angles, had gone viral within the school's social ecosystem. Derek was absent, his pride as bruised as his arm. But nature abhors a vacuum, and power structures demand stability. Enter Brit. Tanny Clark, queen of the social hierarchy and Derek's on-again, off-again girlfriend. She saw the disruption as an existential threat to her carefully maintained domain. Humiliation demanded response. She didn't believe in magic tattoos. She believed in social annihilation, and she was an expert practitioner. The confrontation was staged for maximum impact, the cafeteria during lunch, when the entire school was present and captive. Brittany approached Maya's isolated corner table, flanked by her inner circle, phones already recording. "Think you're tough now, freak?" Brittany's voice carried across the cafeteria, designed to draw every eye. "You humiliated Derek. You think your little parlor trick scares me?" Maya stood, trying to leave. "I don't want problems." Too late. Brittany grabbed a full carton of chocolate milk from a nearby tray and hurled it directly at Maya's chest. It exploded across her clean shirt in a sticky brown cascade of humiliation. The cafeteria gasped collectively. This was psychological warfare, and Brittany was a general. But Alexandros understood disrespect. A low growl emanated from Maya, starting in her throat but deepening with something not entirely human. The temperature in the cafeteria seemed to drop. The tattoo, even beneath the wet, stained fabric, pulsed with dark energy. Asterisk to koiniko so status den semini tapada, asterisk, the ancient voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. Maya's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto Brittany's with predatory focus. "He says your social status means nothing. He says you're a gnat buzzing at a lion. He's asking my permission to tell you a story." For the first time, genuine fear cracked through Brittany's carefully maintained composure. "What story?" Maya took a step forward. Her voice became a duet, her own soft tone woven with Alexandros's gravel. "The last person who dishonored our family. A collaborator in our village. He told the Germans where Alexandros and his fighters were hiding." She paused, her smile devoid of warmth. "They found him 3 days later, hanging from a bridge by his own intestines. Do you have the stomach for that story, Brittany?" Brittany's tea umbled backward, her face a mask of terror. She turned and fled, her followers scattering like startled birds. The cafeteria remained silent for a full 30 seconds after they'd gone. But victory came with consequence. Principal Anderson summoned Maya to his office within the hour. He was a tired man, worn down by budget cuts and school board politics, and now faced with something he couldn't classify or understand. "Maya, I'm hearing very disturbing reports," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Assault. Threats. Some kind of phenomenon." "Self-defense," Maya said quietly. "Derek attacked me first. There's video." "Be that as it may," Anderson sighed, "you're causing disruption. This voice, this thing you do, it needs to stop." Maya's laugh was bitter. "You think it's a choice? You think I asked to have a dead soldier living in my skin? To feel his rage when mine isn't enough? To carry his grief for a homeland I've only visited once? To mourn a war that ended before my parents were born?" She stood, exhaustion making her seem older than 17. "He's not a disruption, Principal Anderson. He's family. And he's the only reason I'm still alive." She walked out, leaving him speechless. The final confrontation came a week later, and it wasn't with a bully. A former student, unhinged by perceived injustices and armed with his father's pistol, slipped through a propped-open delivery entrance. The lockdown sirens blared too late. He was already in the West Wing, screaming about unfairness, firing random shots into ceiling tiles. Panic erupted instantly. Students and teachers barricaded themselves in classrooms, desks piled against doors. Maya was in the library, alone in a study corral when the first shot echoed through the building. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't a schoolyard fight. This was life and death on a scale even Alexandros hadn't prepared her for. Asterisk Maya, asterisk, the voice in her mind was calm, a general surveying terrain. Asterisk, this is what I am for. This is my purpose. Trust me, asterisk. The gunman stumbled into the library, wild-eyed and shaking. No one understands. No one ever listened. He saw Maya standing by the windows. Raised the gun. What happened next defied description. Alexandros didn't just guide Maya. He became her. Her body transformed into a weapon honed by decades of guerrilla warfare against impossible odds. She moved with her natural speed, flowing between bookshelves like smoke given form. The gunman fired. The bullet shattered a window 3 feet from where Maya had been a fraction of a second earlier. He's terrified. His stance is poor. His grip is weak, Alexandros narrated in her mind, tactical and precise. Disarm. Subdue. Do not kill. We are not executioners, As the gunman spun, searching for her, Maya emerged from behind a shelf directly at his back. Her movements were not her own, they were muscle memory from another lifetime. A precise strike to his wrist. The gun clattered across the floor. A kick to the back of his knee. He buckled. Her arm wrapped around his throat in a perfect blood choke that rendered him unconscious in seconds. When police swarmed in 3 minutes later, they found a disarmed assailant on the carpet and a pale, silent girl sitting against a bookshelf, staring at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. She was a hero. The media called her the Angel of Northwood High. They never mentioned the tattoo, the voice. The official story featured a brave girl who'd learned self-defense from YouTube videos. But in the town, among the students, the truth was known and whispered. Maya had saved them all. The bullying stopped. Not from fear alone, but from something deeper. Respect, perhaps. Recognition that strength came in forms they'd never imagined. Derek Mitchell approached her one day after school, his eyes on the pavement. I was wrong, he mumbled. About everything. Thank you for what you did. She just nodded. What else was there to say? The story ends not with celebration but with acceptance. Maya sits on the roof of her apartment building, watching the Texas sunset paint the sky in colors of fire and blood. She wears a tank top. The tattoo is fully visible, not as camouflage but as part of her identity. She feels the familiar presence in her mind, a constant watchful warmth. You are strong, Maya. Not because of me. Because you choose to carry this weight, A single clean tear escapes her eye. This one carries no sadness. Only acceptance. She is not just a girl. She is a guardian. She is living history. She is the legacy of Alexandros. And for the first time, she understands what that truly means. She looks at the tattoo on her arm and smiles. We all carry our histories with us. Some are written in photo albums, preserved in family stories told around dinner tables. For Maya Chen, hers is written in ink and spirit, a permanent reminder that the quietest people often hold the most unshakable strength. Her story is testament to a truth we often forget: we are never truly alone, and the courage of our ancestors flows through us when we need it most. Now I have a question for you, a question that connects us all in this digital space. Where are you watching this from? Are you in the sun-scorched deserts of Arizona, the bustling cities of the East Coast, the quiet plains of the Midwest, or the rainy forests of the Pacific Northwest? Maybe you're watching from another country entirely, carrying your own family histories and ancestral stories. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear about the strength you carry from those who came before you.